Is this going to be an Article 25 discussion again? You guys have been talking about Article 25.
No. So I have two concerns. One is that the president, I believe, lacks discernment, and I think that's getting worse. The second thing is you won't call a spade a spade. And the fact that if you can't call what he did sacrilegious, which is clearly the definition of sacrilegious, I think that would be my second problem.
Well, obviously, I wouldn't have posted it out there, and I think President Trump realized he shouldn't have pulled it down.
But can you be critical of him?
I also
sure. I don't think he should have posted it.
But why not apologize? Why not admit I did something?
That's a very good question.
In today's video, Bakari Sellers absolutely destroys Hal Lambert on CNN's Newsnight. This isn't just about one post, it's about judgment and accountability at the highest level. When you're in a position like Donald Trump, every message carries weight, especially when it touches on religion. The US has long tried to keep a clear line between politics and faith, rooted in principles like the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. There's also the consistency issue. Leaders from both parties have faced backlash for far less, and studies from the Pew Research Center show that voters actually value accountability and honesty when mistakes happen. But before we dive into today's video, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one.
So, Lee is not the only person describing Trump's behavior recently as erratic. And the Times put it all together in a piece that says Trump's erratic behavior and extreme comments revive mental health debate as the former president threatens to wipe out Iran, attacks the Pope. Even some former allies and advisors are questioning whether he's grown increasingly unbalanced, describing him as lunatic and clearly insane. And look, let's pretend that it's not Trump. If someone that you loved who is in a position of power, like a CEO or something, posted something like that, people would be calling and asking, are you okay?
Well, I think what the reason Trump said that is because the person that originally posted it was, I think, February 6th. And he actually said he posted it because Trump is the doctor for the country. And that's why he posted it out there. Now, the image is obviously a problem, which is why President Trump pulled it down. But I believe President Trump probably didn't think of it as being Jesus at the time. He saw it as, oh, I'm healing the country, which is what
you believe that.
No, I believe that.
Depicting
I definitely believe.
Hal, you believe that he was depicting himself as a doctor?
Well, that's what the original post was about, and so Trump retweeted it.
No, I believe, because I don't think Donald Trump knows who Jesus is. Well, so I honestly believe that he was confused. I mean, the fact that people can't call a spade, like this was sacrilegious. I mean, there were people who gave Barack Obama hell for a tan suit and a selfie stick. And you have somebody out here who's mocking Jesus Christ, and the Republican Party, GOP, they think they're God's only party anyway. They simply can't say our president messed up. And then when Riley Gaines, who I don't agree with on much of nothing, Jason Whitlock, who I don't agree with on absolutely anything, when they had the audacity to come out and chastise the president of the United States, he chastises them back.
Yeah, but he pulled it down. When you say he won't admit it, he did pull it back down.
But who is in charge of the man who's in charge of the free world? If he can put out things and then be like, whoops, we can't have someone in charge who can do that. He needs to at least have a team around him that can stop him from putting up the wrong thing.
He's the president of the United States. He can put whatever he wants up. You're not in charge. You can't tell him what to do.
That's the attitude in the
That's
White House.
He can.
No, go
That's
ahead.
the problem.
No, go ahead.
I'm confused. Pushback, though, that he did it. It stayed up for 13 hours.
Well, I'm just saying, she keeps saying, who's going to stop him from doing this?
Well, I think
Congress is going to stop him.
People are supposed to stop him.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. You've been trying to jump in. It's like double dutch around here. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The biggest issue here isn't just the post, it's the lack of guardrails. In any serious organization, whether it's the government or a Fortune 500 company, leaders don't just act completely unchecked. There are advisors, communications teams, and internal processes designed to prevent impulsive decisions from going public. When those systems either don't exist or aren't being used, that's when mistakes stop being one-offs and start becoming a pattern. And there's data behind why this matters. According to the Pew Research Center, a majority of Americans consistently say temperament and judgment are critical traits for leadership, sometimes even more important than policy positions. So when behavior starts raising questions in those areas, people aren't overreacting. They're responding to what they already say they value. There's also the escalation factor. When rhetoric starts involving threats toward entire countries or religious symbolism, it doesn't just stay domestic. Global leaders, allies, and even markets pay attention to that. We've seen in past situations that a single statement from a US president can shift diplomatic relationships or increase tensions almost instantly. And the "he can do whatever he wants" argument is exactly where the concern comes in. The US system was built on checks and balances, not unlimited personal discretion. That principle goes all the way back to the US Constitution, the idea that no single person should operate without accountability. At the end of the day, this isn't about nitpicking one moment. It's about whether there's a consistent level of discipline and oversight behind the scenes.
I'm just confused as to what the New York Times is identifying as being odd behavior here. I mean, this is precisely how he's behaved for the last 8 years, 10 years. If you ask Republican voters back in the first term, the first thing they tell you they don't like about Donald Trump is the tweets back when it was Twitter.
Right.
The tweets. You can't count on 15 hands how many times his social media has gotten him in trouble, and yet he can persist in part because this is something
But don't you think on
No, it's not okay. It's just a feature of how he is, and I wish they had a more disciplined com shops.
I think you're right. Like, look, there's a polling earlier this year. 61% say that Trump doesn't share their values. 64% say he does not have the right temperament to be president. So you're right. Americans see him for who he is. But I think the issue,
Republicans don't like that too.
The issue right now is on the importance of the things that he's sending these messages about. It's not just calling his political opponents names. He's threatening to wipe out a civilization in the middle of a war. And then he's getting into a tit for tat, which we'll talk more about in a little bit, with the Pope, and then sending out an image that even his own supporters are saying, don't do that. I mean, Riley Gaines's comment was, a little humility would serve him well. God shall not be mocked. But it's the why. It's the stuff that he's doing it on that makes a difference.
I do think there's
Let
a
me
little.
just let Noah
sorry, go ahead.
respond, please.
Well, I actually don't have much to say. I think everybody's right. I think Riley Gaines is right that we wish the president would exercise a little bit more discretion. He cannot do that. He refuses to do that. And then folks like J.D. Vance come around and say, well, this is what's best about him. It does fuel his ego in ways that
But
are
I also think that
counterproductive.
we're not clearly acknowledging the fact that it's getting worse. And I had a great aunt, Jenny Marie. She was the matriarch of our family. And she was 88 years old and still driving. And then she used to come to church and park in the front. And then the day she hit the pastor's car, my dad had to go take away the keys, right? Because it just progressively got worse.
Is this going to be an Article 25 discussion again? You guys have been talking about Article 25.
No.
Never
So I have two concerns. One is that the president, I believe, lacks discernment, and I think that's getting worse. The second thing is you won't call a spade a spade. And the fact that if you can't call what he did sacrilegious, which is clearly the definition of sacrilegious, I think that would be my second problem.
Well, obviously, I wouldn't have posted it out there, and I think President Trump realized he shouldn't have and pulled it down.
But can you be critical of him?
I also
Sure, I don't think he should have posted
Also,
it.
But why
how-
not apologize? Why not admit I did something?
That's a very good question.
This debate gets intense, but Bakari's side really holds up when you look at what leadership is supposed to look like in moments like this. Because the key issue isn't just that this behavior has been happening for years, it's that the stakes are completely different now. When rhetoric moves from tweets and insults to things involving war, religion, and entire nations, it's not just part of the personality anymore. It has real consequences. We've seen in past global conflicts that even a single statement from a US president can shift diplomatic tensions or escalate situations quickly, and the data backs up why people are concerned. Polling from organizations like the Pew Research Center consistently shows that a majority of Americans care deeply about temperament and judgment in a president. So when those concerns keep coming up, it's not media spin. It's something voters are already paying attention to. There's also the normalization problem. Just because something has been happening for a long time doesn't make it acceptable. In fact, historically, when behavior that would have been considered disqualifying starts getting brushed off as just how someone is, that's usually when institutions start weakening. The US system was designed to push back on that, which is why concepts like checks and balances exist in the US Constitution in the first place. And then there's the escalation in tone. Threatening language, especially during an active conflict, doesn't just stay domestic. allies hear it, adversaries hear it, and it can complicate already fragile situations. That's why past presidents, regardless of party, have typically been much more measured in how they communicate during crises. Because when the stakes get higher, the margin for error gets smaller, and that's why people are pushing back now more than ever.
I think part of it is in politics, when you start apologizing, you run into problems. And I think that's the issue.
That is not okay. Just to be clear.
But in Christianity, when you start apologizing,
hold on a
you
second.
actually help.
Just to be clear, it is not true that in politics, when you apologize, things start to go wrong. That the only person who believes that is Donald Trump, and he is wrong about that. In politics, it is okay to acknowledge mistakes. That's actually what most politicians do. The fact that Trump doesn't do it is not it's not a virtue, Val. I mean, it's not a virtue. And why, by the way, is it that Trump needs to post something first, see the backlash to realize that it was wrong?
Well, as was said, he's been posting now for 12 years.
Yeah, but does he have the judgment to know that it's wrong before he posts it?
I think he does. I mean, this was done at what, 3 in the morning, I think? So
what was going on at 3 in the morning at the White House?
He thinks it's cool. Like, he posts this thing where he's dressed up as Robert Duvall in Apocalypse Now, going to war with Chicago. He thinks it's cool. He doesn't actually.
But also at 4
His
a.m.
fans shouldn't
But
kill
also
him.
at 4 a.m. on Easter Sunday, he was also posting about committing a genocide. Like, you can't decouple them. And all I'm saying is, when you look at them together, and when you look at them, not in exclusivity, but together, you have a president of the United States who is getting older by the day.
I really think we should make a distinction between being provocative and blasphemous with making threats against an adversary in war that you've interpreted to mean breaking the nuclear taboo.
I will take the fact you at least called it blasphemous, so I'll take a win.
You just said a lot of things there now. We're going to get to the next part of this conversation because it's related to this. Speaking of religion, the leader of the free world takes on the head of the Catholic Church.
This idea that apologizing is somehow a weakness in politics just doesn't hold up. Historically, a lot of leaders have benefited from owning mistakes. It builds credibility. Even data from groups like the Pew Research Center shows that voters tend to trust leaders more when they admit when they're wrong instead of doubling down. So avoiding accountability doesn't protect you. It usually just drags things out longer. And then there's the pattern of behavior. It's not just one post at a weird hour. It's the combination of messaging, timing, and tone. When you've got posts happening in the middle of the night, mixed with aggressive rhetoric and controversial imagery, it starts to raise questions about the process. Most administrations have layers of staff specifically to filter and manage communication, especially during sensitive moments. That's not about control, it's about preventing unnecessary escalation. There's also the bigger issue of mixing symbolism with serious policy moments. When religious imagery and wartime rhetoric start overlapping, that's when things get tricky. The US has always tried to keep a separation between those spheres, something rooted in principles like the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. When that line gets blurred, it's not just controversial, it can come off as tone deaf, especially during global tensions. And the escalation piece matters too. Statements made during conflict don't just stay domestic, they're heard by allies and adversaries alike. That's why past presidents, regardless of party, have usually been more measured in how they communicate during high-stakes situations. At the end of the day, this isn't about being edgy or provocative, it's about judgment, timing, and knowing when to take responsibility.